Hello and welcome to the How2Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. Hello, today I'm here with Josh Ploch. Josh is a serial entrepreneur with both corporate background, where he was manager of some pretty good sized companies in their HR and understands the HR and actually speaks at HR events, all the way to being a serial entrepreneur where he owns multiple franchises, and he's also a business broker. So we're going to interview him today and find out everything we can about what a business broker looks for and what information we can get from him when we're looking to either buy or sell a business. Thanks for being on the show, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ron.
Cool. So the first question is always get to know you type of question. So start anywhere you want to start. And I know some people have a painful childhood or something, so I'm not telling you to start. Don't go through anything that's going to make this an emotional event or whatever. But just tell us your story.
I won't go through my CIA career. Is that what you're saying? I can leave that out.
Yeah, it's I always joke around. I didn't warn you ahead of time. I don't talk about anything I did in the military. I was military intelligence, and I just can't. So you can ask me questions. We go back and forth on this. There's just certain things I won't talk about. And so there's certain things I won't ask you about personally. But anyway, so tell us about kind of who you are, what you stand for, and something cool to know about you.
Yep. So, as you said, I actually started my career originally not in HR. I was a women's basketball coach in Division I, and pivoted out of that pretty early. That's what my undergrad was in, and that was what I thought I was going to do for a really long time. Pivoted out of that early, just listening to a mentor that just said, this is not the life for a family. I was newly married, and, we travel for games half the year. We travel recruiting half the year. And he said, you know what, this is not a family person's career. There's just so much turnover in coaching and all that other stuff. So I pivoted really early on and got into operations and HR and staffing, and have done a number of things in that space over the years for, from international recruiting to recreation space, tribal space, all kinds of stuff. Worked for multinationals, a whole bunch of, just a bucket of things. And through that time, like you mentioned, we had a number of different businesses, a number of different franchises. And I really just started to see the connection between those and what I was doing, and what a lot of the things that, people were using in corporate America on a little bit larger scale, where that could really add value in smaller mom and pop operations, both the ones I was doing, the ones that my friends were doing. So we transitioned a couple years ago, just starting to be able to put some of that knowledge and experience to work, and adding some of those things, when you get into value stream mapping and Six Sigma, things like that, applying some of those tools that we used over the years into smaller operations to really help them grow.
Sounds really interesting. So you and I have known each other for a couple of years now. We both have backgrounds in real estate and entrepreneurial ventures. I tagged you on one of the big acquisitions I was working on. Unfortunately, to be on the team and be part of that acquisition, because it had 55 employees. And I know enough about HR to get myself in trouble. I could probably fill up a Post-it note. And so you don't do that when you have 55 employees. There's rules and stuff we got to follow. So
there are a couple, yep.
Yeah. So I think this is going to be really fun, because not only are you a business broker, you're a serial entrepreneurial, and we can actually ask some questions about, I'm acquiring a company that's got 55 plus employees. What is there anything else I need to do inside of the due diligence type of questions, right?
Yep.
Sorry. So let's just kind of get started here. What interested you in in becoming a business broker? What opened your eyes to that and moved you forward there?
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it. We both are active also in the real estate space. So we were meeting a lot of property owners that were also business owners that were looking to transition. And again, it was really just sell to the people that are there getting ready to buy, right? It was just filling a need, that really matched between what we were doing anyway, what I was doing on the side, helping business owners, really just helping provide solutions because, it's somewhat common to see, a property owner, if they have commercial property or, a bunch of apartment buildings, a bunch of multifamilies, a lot of them are also serial entrepreneurs. They may have a business that they're also looking to exit. They may have a couple different things. So there was really just a synergy there that, we wanted to help just in any way we can, right? If we can help them take care of their property and move on to the next step, if we can help them take care of their business and move on to the next step, we really found that it's a win-win for everybody.
Awesome. So let's kind of walk through the process. A business owner, they've been running their business for a while for one reason or another. There's many reasons why somebody would want to consider a liquidity event, to sell their business and stuff. And, they either get a letter from you or they hear about you in some shape or fashion. They Google you, find you online, and or they show up at your office. Kind of go through the process of what a business broker looks at when looking at businesses that are thinking about selling, because I think it's probably a little different than what I would look at, as an acquisitions guy.
Yep. And I'll give you kind of the official answer, but then also give you the side answer. And the official answer is the traditional valuation just looks at your tax returns over the last couple of years. We go through a process that we call add backs, which are, things that the new owner can expect to have. If you pay your phone bill or if you pay a car payment or if you some of those things that are uniquely yours, we can add those back because the new owner would also expect to receive that benefit either through that process or through just getting the money. And then we just mark, we do a market comparison, a market analysis, determine the valuation, and we can see based on those numbers, based on what the market holds as far as what other properties, what other businesses are selling for in that same space, and then determine the valuation. And I'm oversimplifying it. Our valuation documents are, I think, 37 pages long. So I'm giving you a very, very high level overview, but that's really the core. We look at the tax returns, we determine the revenue, we maximize the revenue for the business owner where we can. And then that's really where, let's say the hard work begins. And this is my second answer to you. The hard work begins on the selling side. It's, similar to real estate, right? Everybody can lock up a house. It's selling it at the right price that's the challenge, and getting that person in place. So the fun thing about business broker, is that there are as many solutions as there are companies, and there may be a business that, is a great opportunity for a roll-up, which I know is a space that you're active in. There could be a business that's a great opportunity for, an acquisition for another similar company. Like you have a heating and air company. There may be a bigger heating and air company that, wants to absorb that, those clients. There is just every opportunity. There's all types of options, all types of opportunities, once a business owner decides that they want to take that next step. And that's really where the creativity comes in, the work comes in, being proactive, and that's really where our work comes in, on these transactions.
Yeah. So in our world, the acquisition mergers world, where we're actually acquiring the acquiring side, one of our frustrations is across the board. I'm not saying that your brokerage does this or any particular brokerage does this, but we find that the brokerage's prices or the evaluations tend to be a little high. And here's what I attribute that to. Seller, here's a scenario, and I just want to walk through this, and I want your feedback on kind of what you think's going on or how frustrating this is to you also, because I'm sure this will happen to you if it hasn't happened already. Seller comes to business broker one does their evaluation and says business is worth, $1 million.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, they said, I have an appointment with, business broker two. I'm going to go see business broker two. And he goes, oh yeah, $1 million. I can get you $1 million too. Right. And the next thing you know, this guy's gone to his third business broker. It's out there listed at 1.4, when honestly it's probably worth 950K, right? Even the first broker is try to get the most he can. And now we've got a seller who has unreasonable expectations of 1.4 and doesn't understand why a mergers and acquisitions guy like myself comes in and goes, you know what, I couldn't give you a dime over 950, right? Or we have to get real creative if I do. So I mean, have you seen any of that going on yet, or?
Sure. Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges with the industry, right? And it's for that exact reason. It is on the broker generally to be able to educate the business owner on what the proper price is. And, the proper price is what's going to move the business if they're ready to exit. But like you said, there are certainly brokers out there that will promise things that maybe they shouldn't be, or, not, and I won't even go negative, right? They can be overly optimistic, right? on their listing price and say, yeah, I can probably get this, or, oh, I've seen this, and, I think I can make that happen. But it does create a challenge for the business owner. It creates a challenge for the buyer. It creates, sometimes can create a bad taste in the mouth of that business owner. So really, it's up to us as an industry just to really make sure we are doing our due diligence and, all the things that many of the other industries go through, right? Our training, our network, making sure that we're connecting with, other people in the market, our corporate partners, to say, hey, what is the best and most reasonable price that's going to get the outcome that we want from this, right? And listing it for 300,000 more, if that means it's going to either never sell, or sit on the market for months and months and months, isn't a great option for anybody. So there are people out there that would do that, like I said, but it is a challenge that the industry has to just stay on top of and have some hard conversations. And I would say that's probably what it comes down to, right? It's a hard conversation challenge, and some people, are more comfortable with having those conversations than others.
It's interesting. What it leads to is, in the acquisitions and merger space, I've actually taken on a few different mentors, taking courses, just because I'd rather learn from somebody else's mistake and pay to learn that way than I would ever to pay to learn from my own mistakes. So, and 2 out of the 3 mentors I've been through really discourage us to go into anything that's currently listed or anything that's currently listed by our broker, just for that reason right there. That reason and the brokers, in my experience and with these guys' experience, they'll kill a deal if there's creative financing on the end because they're risk to the seller. So, what's your thought process on, doing something other than an LBO, a leverage buyout, where the seller gets the full check at closing?
I look for situations where, the best of your ability, you can have honest people sitting down at the table with the best interests in mind, right? So, I think it's good for the sellers or buyers, whatever side you're on, to have someone, that's looking at these things and has some experience in them. I would be hesitant to do deals in a vacuum, just because, again, there's things out there maybe you haven't seen, things out there that you haven't experienced, and I think a broker does provide that for you. I certainly see from the cost perspective that, they may not see as good a value, if they have brokers that are trying to get the most money to the seller. I think you can have both and still win. Certainly brokers bring you, on top of a well-prepared seller and a well-prepared financial statement and a well-prepared company, they also bring you experience, and they're going to bring you, additional deals if they go well, because we see a lot of them come through. I've seen on the flip side too, where, I work with people that will buy things that maybe would not be sold traditionally, right? So, I may see a deal and bring it to a partner, and I may look at this deal and say, you know what, this probably wouldn't be a great deal for you if we list it traditionally and put it on Biz by Sell or whatever that is. But, I have a partner who this would be right up their alley, and you can win, they can win, and we can all, this can be we can stack wins for everybody on this. So, that feeling doesn't surprise me, but obviously I'm going to come down probably on the other side of the fence from it. And I think there is a lot of value that we can add just by working together.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've noticed, I've interviewed, not on the podcast, but just like talking to business brokers and trying to get some of the bigger business brokerages out there, like the head guys, to come on the podcast. I talked to one, I won't say their name just because I'm going to say something about them and I don't want to discourage anybody. They have over 200, 250, what they refer to as deal originators. And I was talking to one of their, he's a director of inbound deals or whatever his title is. And so his job is everything, all the leads, all the stuff comes through him. And then he farms that out to, various people. And, he was telling me that they get between 30 and 50, what he calls do not qualifies, DNQs a day. And so, we got into a deep conversation. I wish he'd have let me record it. He has to get corporate compliance to allow him to do that. But as to what a do not qualify is, so, the question I have for you is, in your world, are there businesses that are going to come through that just, they don't qualify to be listed by a broker? What would that criteria look like?
Yeah. And again, I'll talk about kind of the challenge and then more specifics. But, the challenge that all business owners have is through the life of your business, you are trying to minimize your tax burden, right? So what that looks like, when you go to exit, is that you have tax returns that show very little revenue. And so both those steps are very valid, but our job or the job of somebody in this process, if you're going to exit your business, is to dig into this and figure out, what stays, what goes, right? What does this look like when you peel some of those layers away? So to answer your question specifically, what a do not qualify is either going to be someone that shows a very low revenue, that maybe wouldn't make a great deal for a buyer, there wouldn't be any kind of return on their investment, or a business that's just very owner focused. That can be really challenging, right? If that owner exits that seat, if it's hard to see a straight line for that business to continue, then that's going to be a really hard sell. So those are some of the other ones. I mean, there's other things in there, like, if you see some certain things in their financials, or, obviously if they're running a loss, things like that can make it really challenging to sell. Unless, again, you're able to add back some of those things, and they're verifiable, right? That's the third thing. If we have a business owner that says, I'm showing a loss every year, but I have a cash business and I take out $100,000 a week in a paper bag, just trust me. That's going to be, that's an extreme example, right? But that's going to be.
I've heard it.
Right? But that's going to be a do not qualify because you can't verify that. And we as brokers wouldn't ask anybody. I would not want to represent that. So those things like that are unverifiable, would fall into that category.
What about high debt structures? Is there, on your evaluation model, does somebody's just kind of overburdened with debt and they're barely maintaining the servicing of their debt? Would that push them out for you?
It's going to be a lot tougher, obviously. There are some people that specialize in that space where they can restructure some of that, but it would certainly cut down your pool of buyers. I would say it would more fall into those buyers that specialize in that type of deal, versus somebody more traditional that may be coming in as an owner operator, or looking for an investment.
Yeah, I actually had I reached out and started talking to some people, and I have a group of people that can do that restructuring. There's not very many out there. I've only found one so far, but it is possible. Now they need a much bigger company than what I was initially targeting, but they can do it. So that is possible. So one of the other questions I like to ask is, like, what do you believe is a common myth about the business brokerage, profession that you just like to debunk. It's like it's out there. People think it's not true, and you'd like to nip it.
Yeah, I would say probably the one that you mentioned, that it just, when you're working with the broker, that it's no longer a good value. The opposite of that is true, where we have the experience that we can bring ad backs and show value and structure those things so that, some of the things that you may not have already looked at, we can highlight some of those areas, both on the seller and the buyer side, right? So the buyer side, make sure that they're getting as much value as they can, and the buyer side, make sure that we're looking at everything, that we need to be. So it's, our role on the broker side is just to be the partner, and make sure that everything is getting counted, that should be, and that we make the deal as good as possible for everyone involved. We want if I'm representing a seller, I want you or a buyer to be successful as well. It's not zero sum.
It's interesting as I find myself looking at things that I know are outside of what I'm looking for, but I also know people that it might work for. I had one this morning. I was talking to a guy who has a mobile tire repair shop. Turns out he came out and replaced some of mine, and I told his employee that, started asking questions about his business and said, I might want to talk to the owner someday. Well, I got contacted by the owner. He's thinking about retiring and selling the trucks and stuff. They actually go to your place, and you can swap your tires right there. Like they did it out in my field at my farm. They literally brought 2 tires. I had double blowout, and they just brought 2 new tires out there, and pulled mine off, balanced them right there in his truck, and had hydraulic equipment in the van, and just did it right then and there. But I'm not interested in on that. But I know a couple of mobile mechanic shops and stuff that I might be able to put something together for those guys and have it add on to their business. And what we call take a stake. I might work out something where I end up with 10 or 20 or 25% of something because I pulled it together. How creative do you work? Like, where's the boundaries on like the creativity that we can do deals with a broker like yourself? Could doing add-ons, and there's people getting pieces of the deal and stuff. Is everything on the table so long as it's all fair to both parties, or is there just a structure that you want to the owners to stick to?
It varies from state to state, and just before I get into that, I mean, I'll say just personally, right? I like the game. I love entrepreneurship. Some of those stories are why I enjoy this, right? I'll sit across from an owner that starts describing their business and describing the revenue, and you're just like, wow, that's cool. You're making a great living doing that. I just never would have thought it. And I love hearing those stories just because I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and I geek out over those things, and those are the stories that I just love to dig into. Like how did you build that? How did you think of that? How did you get your customers for how does a mobile mechanic get their customers instead of going to Robertson's or something like that? But yeah, I mean that's again why I'm in it, because I love that stuff. I love those stories. And then to answer your other question, it really varies from state to state. So some of the states are really regulated, similar to real estate agents. Some of them even require the same licensing as agents. So those are going to be, a lot more structured, those states. Some of the other ones, it's a lot more flexible, and on that, I would say it also just varies on the broker. Some brokers may be more interested in, being more creative. Others, really like the lane and stay in there as well.
It's interesting is I'm fascinated too. I mean, I have you go out there and you like somebody's doing a business and you think they can't be doing much, and you start looking at their books like, holy cow, right? I have a cousin. If you ever Googled him or whatever, we look a lot alike. We have the beard. We're both big guys, and he owns a business that sells basically giant ball bearings. He actually he actually has 2 brass or chrome balls tattooed on his leg, on his leg, and he likes to do the joke, he likes to show people his calf, right? And but it's their ionized. I know what they use. I guess they use it in like tumblers and stuff to clean other materials. So he sells these things, and it's an industrial product. But I'm thinking you sell steel marbles basically, or ball bearings, and how much money could you make doing that? And we were talking, and he does pretty good business. It's just him, and
Pretty good.
it is like, it's I won't say the numbers because we're relatives and stuff, but it was impressive, right? You're thinking, how can you make a living selling
Right.
pretty much a one product line too? It's just they're hardened, they call them ionized or anodized or something like that. Ball bearings is all they really are. But yeah,
I
I'm
met somebody
always
else doing really well selling spindles, like on your stair railings. They have a whole business selling spindles that you can't find at Lowe's, and they're doing great. Just it's awesome.
yeah, right. So so I'm fascinated by it too. So there are times where I catch myself like, I know I'm not going to buy it, but it's kind of like it's the
Right.
deer in the headlights. I can't stop listening because I'm like really curious about how they got
Yeah.
there. And the
Hmm.
beauty of it is I'm also passionate about helping them succeed. So if I take their time listening through the whole process, I try to connect them with somebody that can get them to the next step, either a business broker like yourself or somebody that I know that could. A lot of those mom and pop shops, like that tire thing, it just isn't. They don't have 10 employees. They don't have the revenue. He does, $300,000 a year. But by the time you pay for insurance and the maintenance and his service tech and everything else, it kind of eats that up and buy your tires and everything. But it would be a great add-on to somebody that's already got a
Hmm.
mobile service that's already going
Right.
out and fixing cars or whatever. So I know a couple of those mobile mechanics. So.
Hmm.
Um, so in the area of like mergers and acquisitions, let's just jump right back into this. What areas of the side is there's just so many different things. You can liquidate them by taking them public. We can do the roll-ups like I'm involved in, these international roll-ups and stuff. What areas are interesting to you right now that you're learning about and you're looking into growing into? What has your interest currently?
The two that I focus on mainly, well, probably three. And, this really just, again, is broker's personal experience, so this is based around just where I came up and what I've spent a lot of time. But the three areas that I focus mainly on are manufacturing, because I spent a lot of time in manufacturing. So specifically in that, value chains, people looking at expanding, their reach up and down their vertical, picking up different steps along the way. I really like the online business space, so drop shipping, FBA, things like that, and then restaurants are the third. So those are
Man,
probably. Go ahead.
those FBA, those drop shipping businesses, they're going for crazy amounts right now.
You're going
I
crazy.
had I have a friend who that's what he does. He buys them, sells them. To the point I think he's got $60 million worth of FBA, revenue in his portfolio. And when he goes, he's having a hard time buying anymore because like they're wanting, 10, 12, 14 times revenue. And he just doesn't want to wait that long to get his money back. He's never had to pay that much for them. But it's kind of insane. It's almost as hot as the software as a service business.
Yeah. And, part of the value in those is really part of the challenge in traditional businesses, right? When those are set up, oftentimes they're set up to be very low maintenance, so either the owner is not involved or the owner is involved very little. So as on the buyer side, it's so easy for you to see the value and the return and to see how it fits into your system. So all of the challenges that you have in a mom and pop type operation, from when you're looking to exit and the buyer side, are almost prepackaged in these FBA businesses. So I really think that's one of the reasons why you're seeing, those become so popular. And obviously they're location independent, things like that. They add a lot of other kind of peripheral values, but, they are really set up for entrepreneurs and investors, just in their structure by default.
Cool. So, I always like to ask if we've asked some decent questions here. I know I've hit a couple topics and stuff. What questions should I be asking you? I mean, you're the business broker, you're a serial entrepreneur, you own franchises. What should we be talking about inside of acquisitions and mergers, buying and selling businesses?
What I'm most interested in, on the side thing outside of the granular, is where is the world going and what does that look like, as we, continue to be more location independent, as COVID doesn't return people to the office, as we change administrations, not get into political stuff, but, where is industry going? Where is manufacturing going? Where, is the thought leaders going? What's this look like? Who's winning? How are they winning? That's what I spend a lot of time just studying and keeping an eye on. And then inside of that, how we can help people really get to the next level and reach their goals.
Awesome. So is there any piece of advice you would consider most important if somebody's starting to look at, like, I think I want to sell this? Like, how far back should people plan? I know what I'm thinking, the word that answer is, but how far back do you believe that a business owner should start planning for the exit? And what are some of the things they should probably do to prepare for meeting you or a guy like me?
Yeah. So certainly, we like to look back at 3 years tax returns. That's the cut and dry answer. So really evaluating those from that structure standpoint, but really looking at, again, are you running this as we use mom and pop as a bucket descriptor, but, are you running it like that, or are you running it like a corporation? So a couple things that I like to really have people look at is, keep an eye on your finances. What's that look like? How linked are you personally to what's going on in the business? And from the aspect of, if you're not there, can a CEO sit there? Can a COO sit there? Can that change be really obvious, or do you run everything through your personal credit card and, you're just completely intertwined? So is there a separation there between you and the business? Two is succession planning, right? So if you're going to exit, are people ready for you to be out of that seat and somebody to come into that seat that doesn't really know or has a learning curve? Do you have those people in place that are going to not just be able to maintain it, but to be able to grow the business? Because that's what the next buyer is going to be looking for. So work on your succession planning. Are you ready? Or again, are you somebody that keeps everything really close to the vest? Because that just makes for a tough sale. And third, if you have staff, if you have 5, 10, 50 people, start to prep them. That goes massively overlooked. And it's one of the biggest things that can really make a transition difficult. Especially, again, if it is a family type business or an owner that's been there for a really long time, they feel like they're part of the family. So if that person exits, you're going to feel like you lost a family member. So, the owner, the broker, you may spend a lot of time, hammering down on financials and revenue and ROI and ad backs. But, there's 50 people here that just feel like they lost their favorite uncle or their favorite dad or, something like that. And, there's oftentimes that part is just massively overlooked in the transition. So I'd really spend some time, thinking about that. And that may mean that you start talking about it. You may start planning it. Again, each company is different. Each culture is different. So each person has to answer this for themselves. But, whatever that looks like to prepare your staff and to prepare that business, whether it means, hey, I'm going to have a retirement party, or I'm going to retire in 3 years, or, hey, everybody, we're starting to look at this, so that isn't a shock. That will just make it easier for you, for them, for the new buyer, everybody involved.
So what I'm hearing is 3 years. If you're really planning on doing this, 3 years, we're going to look back 3 years. I look for 3 years trailing financials also. Mm-hmm. So at a minimum, I think people should prepare. I mean, I honestly think people should run their business as if it's for sale. But if you're thinking about retiring in the next 5 to 10 years, or whatever, I honestly think if you're thinking about retiring next year, you're a year behind. You really should, like, the 3 year mark is when I look at. Start doing your taxes to show the financial strength of your company instead of trying to write every single thing off, right? Start grooming the team, the management to be your replacement, and even take vacations, do what it takes, like go away for a couple of weeks, come back and see what's left undone, train. So you're grooming the next generation of of leadership inside of the company. And the piece that I didn't realize, and you brought a very keen point, I guess it's your HR background, because you've probably seen this happen a few times, right? Is how to, starting the discussion with the team. And I think there's a myth out there. Like a lot of times there's all these NDAs signed and this hush hush. I have to go look at a business under the guise that I'm an insurance adjuster or whatever story they tell people. Like I've been about just about everything, right? Showing up at a business site. Never the acquiring, new owner.
Right.
So I think there's a myth around that too, that, if they tell everybody it's for sale, people will run scared and leave. I think if that's handled right, or if they have somebody like you or somebody to work with them on that language, on that communication, it makes it a lot easier when a guy like myself brings in a team to take over a business that we had acquired.
It does. And like you said, that is the myth, right? Everybody's going to run away. But, really what we see when it's done well is, if you have employees that have been with you 15, 20 years, they really want you, they want you to be able to retire well. They want the business to be able to transition well. So they will be your best allies, if you can get to the point where you're handling it well, and that is, you think, oh, everybody's going to run for sure. But, really it's the opposite if you can do it. They do have your best interests in mind, as the current owner that they've worked for 30 years. They do, their identity oftentimes is linked to the business. They very much want that to be successful for years to come. And they will. They're going to be what makes it successful through that transition.
Awesome. So we're running to the end of the time we have available. So how would you like people to reach out and contact you? Josh, it's the Murphys, right? You own the, what's the official name? It's Murphys.
Murphy Business Brokerage.
Murphy Business Brokerage, okay. Yep. I've seen some titles where they talk about something else inside of the financial or something like that. But Murphy, so you own the Tulsa franchise of the Murphy's Business Brokerage. If somebody wants to talk to you about, taking a look at their business or just ask you questions in general, how would you want them to reach out to you?
Yeah, and I can send this to you to add, but my email is just j.ploch, Ploch, at murphybusiness.com.
Cool. And then I have your LinkedIn, though. Is that okay if people see your LinkedIn thing?
It is.
All right. So I'm going to put that up there real quick and make sure I didn't mess that up. But that's what it said on LinkedIn when I went and visited you.
Looks right. Yeah.
So that's underneath me, but that's his. Mine was up there earlier. For those of you guys that are on the podcast listening, it's just simply go to LinkedIn and search for JOSH PLOCH. And that's how you're going to find him on there. You'll see he does all kinds of stuff. You speak at HR events and everything else. So do you have any final words of wisdom or something we should know about you or your brokerage or anything like that before we go?
No, just, everything is possible. There are plenty of options out there. So don't listen to anybody that says one thing can't happen or another thing can't happen. One foot in front of the other. And we want everybody to be successful.
So step one is call you. Step two is you'll find out what's possible for them, right?
Exactly. That's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show today. And we appreciate it, man. We really do.
All right. Thanks for having me.
All right. Today's show is brought to you by the Investors and Entrepreneurials Professional Mastermind. The Investors and Entrepreneurials Professional Mastermind combines the peer-to-peer mastermind introduced first in Napoleon Hill's famous book, Think and Grow Rich, with accountability partnering, where your peers help you ensure that you set goals, take actions, and get results. If you want to scale, blow past roadblocks, and achieve success faster than you might think is possible, I suggest you take a visit over to TIEPM.com. That's TIEPM.com and check out the Investors and Entrepreneurials Professional Mastermind.